welcome to this week's episode of The Dental Guys. I'm Wes, the Dental Guy.
And I'm John, the Dental Guy. And Wes, we survived Christmas. We made it. Here we are.
Happy New Year.
The new year. I'm excited. Happy New Year to everyone. Of course, you'll be listening to this a little bit maybe after that, but still, we made it. And, you know, I don't know about you, Wes. There was somebody that talked about, I heard it the other day, that, you know, if you have ever read the book Catch-22, one of the things that the protagonist in Catch-22 says is that he is untethered by time. In other words, feeling like he doesn't know if he's in the past, the future, the now, because it's constantly changing in the book. And I feel like that's kind of where we've been since COVID. It's like time is a weird thing right now. Like, what did we do in 23? What about 22, 21, 20? Even 24, I feel like it's just weird. So I don't know. I'm hoping 2025 can be the year of, like, I know where I was, in which month I did something. You know, I can look back and I can sort of like mark time a little bit better.
Yeah,
I feel like the last few years, it's just been going.
The best thing about, I use Google Photos for all of our storage. I use Google One. All of my photo backups since I started shooting digital, which the first year I started shooting digital was 2000, and storing it properly. Let's just say 2003. So 21 years of digital photos. And syncing now that to Google One has really made a robust cloud of memories. And sometimes the memories are tough, you know, especially if you've lost loved ones, but it's also good because you continually grieve the loss of loved ones. I think that's important. That's a whole nother conversation, but I think, you know, what I love about time is that we can remember time, but it is very difficult, especially when there are so many things packed in to your daily life that it begins to blur just a little bit. It almost warps it and it folds time tighter whenever you jam pack so many things. Like, you know, you ever hear like, man, we did so much today. It went so fast. Like, that's because you did so much. And one of the things we talked about in the past, John, and even this morning, you know, I sat down, I had my morning coffee. I had an espresso cappuccino this morning, and was enjoying that. And I had my reading, and I'm a person of faith, so I typically spend time in reading faith-based books in the morning and people that have published years ago. I'm really into. My brother lives in England, and I'm really into old books. And I get these original books from England that were the original published books that are sometimes out of print. It's very interesting to read and very helpful to slow down, take time, meditate on the day, it encourages your soul, you know, the inner spirit. There's something to this as we add more instead of taking away. You know, what are you removing this year, John? You know, what are you removing
that's actually
from your life?
I don't have time to talk about that, but I'm just going to say
you and I love these conversations, you know?
I know. I mean, this is a conversation to have over that coffee. But I will say, which speaking of which, I just got the Niche Zero, so working on it.
Oh, dude. So I got the Time More. I got the Time More.
Yeah, we've been talking about this.
Yep,
I know.
64S.
So I'm yeah, building up the stable, but I think that it's so funny. We're always parallel lines, sometimes intersecting, which I love. But like this year, so one of the things that I've been struck by, I think, you know, I came in over my break, which I don't do this very often. But I came in over my break on the 27th, which is your birthday.
Yeah.
Which, happy birthday.
Thanks, man. Appreciate the text, too.
I did an 8-hour surgery in the OR.
Mm.
No, I didn't do the surgery. I was the tooth guy, but I was involved in a crazy case that I've been working on
for a long time.
Involved in this case for many, many years, with something that's never been done before with orthognathic surgery for the patient that only has implants, basically, that was a kid, chemo patient, crazy situation. And a case that was, just a labor of love, right? So you do, all the stuff we talk about of like trying to become great at things because we idolize people who we want to be more like, or we want to be better, or we want to be in the conversation. We want to be in the room, right, with people who are doing great things. And maybe one day we can do something cool or just being part of it. And you just kind of go, man, when you get to a point of feeling like things that walk in to the office, I'm like, I can handle most of those things.
Yeah.
Not because I figured it out, but I mean, I did, but because of other people. I think that it challenges you to want to focus yourself on the things that make you, that you feel like you're using the best parts of you. And you also feel like you're getting not even a financial reward as much as just, this is something that's special. And there can be a lot of facets to that, which again, I don't have time to get into that, but it creates the need to have to drop things because you can't do it all. And at the same time, I think that the key is, and this gets us kind of into the meat of the show today, the only way that I think you can start to cut things out in a healthy way is to be with other people who you can see succeed as they learn to do the things that for you are basic, but for them are brand new and complicated. Now, for you, it might be basic, but for them, it's brand new and it's complicated. So if you can let yourself free of those things and go, hey, I want to see someone else succeed, so I'm going to focus on things that bring me joy in my own practice, but also I want to remember what it felt like when I did my first veneer case, or I did my first, single implant anterior crown, or I had to figure out how to have a conversation about airway with someone for the first time. And when you can get to a point where that's also equally as fun, it's really pretty cool. But I think you have to say, I don't need to see all those high-end patients, quote unquote, anymore. Like, I can start to say, hey, let's let another person have success and build their brand. While at the same time, I can do things that I feel like I can do simply because of the blessing, the luck of being around other people who have done it and showed me a little bit how to do it. And I think as we're talking today during the show, we're going to be talking a lot about that, about as we return back with our associates, with our younger doctors who are embarking on their journey, what does it change as you come back from their first experience with spirit education, their first experience going kind of into the newness of that? And what does it mean for us too? And that is, again, a big conversation. We may not be able to get to it all tonight, but it's like, okay, you see them start to grab a hold of it. And at one hand, it's easy to focus on them, which I want to focus mainly on tonight. What are they getting and what is it changing? But then also to your question, Wes, like, what does it then do to you? What do you start to be able to let go of and go, hey, you know what? This is something I'm going to do maybe less of or maybe more of as a result of learning to let go.
CE should be challenging, calibrating. It should pose questions. It should confound the mind. It should raise questions in your mind of what you might change, what you may not change. And I think as we talk about this coming up in this episode of Calibrating Confidence with our associates, it will be interesting to hear, each of our takes on what's happened since then, since we've taken the Treatment Planning with Confidence workshop. Text the Dental Guys 865-544-8954. Hey, if you want to start this journey with the Dental Guys in this conversation, a lot of this conversation started back in episode 170 with the pause that we talked about, the pause that you have in the midst of a conversation with a patient. You see something, and instead of reacting, which is what the patient is coming in for, reactive dentistry most of the time, you say, whoa, wait a minute. I'm trying to change the type of practice that I'm building here into something that is a non-reactive patient database. And so you pause and you have a conversation. We're going to talk about that pause today and what it's done for our associates. Before that, John, we appreciate our sponsors, and the Dental Guys is brought to you by
Unlock the potential of one relationship with the Dental Crafters Network, where possibilities are truly infinite. As a family-owned, full-service dental laboratory, they collaborate closely with dentists to understand and meet their unique needs in today's ever-changing dental industry. Choose Dental Crafters Network, where your vision meets innovation. Visit dentalcrafters.net or call 1-800-472-8302. That's 1-800-472-8302. And don't forget to mention the Dental Guys to receive 10% off your first case. Thank you to the Dental Crafters Network for being a longtime sponsor of the Dental Guys.
And by Restorative Driven Implants, call 1-715. Do you still dial 1? Well, maybe you do. 715-207-6587 to start your dental implant journey today. Head over to restorativedrivenimplants.com right now to find out how you can begin learning to place dental implants in your practice. And we're talking about U.S.-based surgical training here, over 60 hours of CE that builds over a series of several weekends. It's incredible. We have some great people there to help. We had Dr. Jan Bublik on the podcast, who's one of the founders of Restorative Driven Implants recently. So check out restorativedrivenimplants.com and begin your implant journey today.
And also, thank you to Spear Education for their partnership with the Dental Guys this year. And if you're interested in what Spear is doing, which this has been something we've been involved with for a very long time, it's pretty awesome to be able to get a discount like this from Spear, 20% off the Treatment Planning with Confidence workshop, which really is the flagship way that Spear has changed each and every one of those who's taken it, which we're going to be talking about in this episode. If you're interested in taking this course, 20% off is no joke. If you put in the code Dental Guys, that's Dental Guys, you will receive 20% off the Treatment Planning with Confidence workshop. Thank you again to Spear Education for partnering with the Dental Guys and for also changing our actual individual practices on a daily basis. And with that in mind, what a time it's been in the last few weeks. And Wes, I mean, I think we had one conversation in mind as we started this, but as it usually is with you and I, we go into bigger and better things, talking about, what does it mean, as we get into this new year, and what are we changing? What did we, and it all comes back to, I think, what you said, as we started back a couple episodes ago, talking about the pause, the time when that patient comes in and you look at the problem that they say they have, but you see more, you start to see more, and you start to go, oh man, instead of just treating this patient based on what they're telling me to do, maybe I see that there's more. But you can only treat what you see. You can only treat what you see, and you can only see what you've been taught to see. And so as we started down this road with our awesome new docs, and we show up out there at Spear Education, and we start to see more. We watched them as they started to see more. And if you see more, now all of a sudden you potentially can treat more, or at very least you can talk about more. And I want to just maybe get into this with you, Wes, as we kind of compare and contrast, what are some of the things that as you returned back after that were happening in the practice, happening with your associate doc? What were some of the changes you started to see? You know, how has that started to kind of weave its way into the practice?
You know, the title of the course is Treatment Planning with Confidence. And, you know, like you said, if you don't know it, you really don't see it. And even from an aspect of, you know, I think Spear does a great job of, you know, wanting dentists to come back and try to change something. Now, listen, we're already a Spear-driven practice. You and I have similar practice models, and you know we're not doing as much family dentistry per se as we used to. And our associates come into our practices, and start doing the family dentistry and start building confidence in that. And what comes with that, and I think with me, it's very difficult to work along someone that has zero knowledge of what photography does for communication, has an interest. So if you have an inquiring mind associate, someone that's like, what are you doing in there right now? Why are you taking photos back in the back room against the black screen? Like, all you said that I needed to do was just take these 6 pictures. And like, if you don't have, even if you have the time, and I took time, and I'll say this because I'm prefacing this conversation with, I took the time to calibrate to some extent. But it's very difficult in a dental practice to practice alongside a doctor that has some knowledge that he has gained over a period of time, and also has some knowledge that he's gained over a period of going to CE like Spear Education and a continuum like that, and is actually doing it. It's very hard to take that information, and in between patients and at the end of the day or at lunchtime, to really get across, you know, all that needs to be communicated. And even if you do, what makes me an authority? You know? Well, it really resides in the results that I'm getting, but even then, some of the results I'm getting are only in photography. They may not ever see the patient in the chair. Here's a before and after of a case I did. Well, that doesn't even show you, that doesn't show you along the way, because you just don't have time. So one thing that we found whenever we came back is, one, my associate became aware of some key aspects of diagnosis. And he mentioned a few. I'm not going to mention them here, but it was a long list of things that, hey, I know what this is now. I know why you're looking at this. He listed them off. And what that allowed him to do was immediately he was able to start treatment planning those things and build those into a conversation of creating awareness with the patient. And immediately, my treatment planning coordinator, because he was doing some consultations with patients, bringing patients back, putting together some sort of presentation that was just kind of what he had learned to do in dental school to go over care, and it turned into more of a finessed, refined. Now, it's not perfect yet because, again, at 3 or 4 years out of school, how can it be? You know, it took us a long time to figure this out. But as you come alongside of what he's saying now and how he's doing things, just being aware of certain things helps my practice. For instance, I do certain procedures that he doesn't do. And so there's procedures that he does that I don't do. Now, imagine this. Imagine if you you knew what a root canal was. Because every patient coming in America typically knows what a root canal is. You know, they know pretty much this is that. And even if they didn't, you can teach somebody in a second what a root canal is. Okay, well, what if I only knew what a root canal was, but I didn't know how to diagnose it? Well, then I'm never going to diagnose it. I'm never even going to talk about it. I'm just going to say, take the tooth out, it's hurting, because that's all I know to do. So if that's all you know how to do, then that's all you're going to refer to your senior doc, or me refer it back to him. So what this course has done for our practice is it realigned a communication style, and it took it up a whole logarithmic scale. You know, it's 10 times better, hands down. And we already had some things in place that he was doing, but he didn't know why he was doing it. He was just doing it, following the motions, and kind of be like, see a new patient, exam first. Why am I gathering all this data? So what we did is we actually went through our exam sheet, our comprehensive exam sheet that I had put together, and we cut it up. He and I did, because I wanted to refine it anyway, where I just went through, John and I finished advanced treatment planning, and there were some things that was on there that didn't need to be on there, and some new things that were brought to light. And he and I went through it, and for the first time in 2 years, he understood why we were gathering the data we were gathering, what each thing was used to diagnose and actually treatment plan for. It's been an unlocking experience. You have to want it as well. So I'll conclude my summation of where we're at right now. Is my associate wants it. He sees the benefit because he sees me doing the dentistry. Now he doesn't need to see the end of the dentistry, because he's like, oh yeah, now I know why you did that. And now I see the benefit to the patient's health because of why you did that. Oh, now I know why you're even considering expansion in a child, because, well, the buccal corridors are narrow. He said that. And so it's like, duh, I've been saying this for 2 years. Doesn't matter if our team knows it. If he doesn't know it, if he thinks of the procedure just like, well, I don't know, what's a root canal? What's palatal expansion? Well, it's just when you put a little RPE in the roof of the mouth. I don't know what it's for. Why are you doing it? So why would he even refer that to me? It's upped the game in my practice. It's changed already. You can feel there's some tension relieved amongst team members, because he understands the vision, and he wants it. And he wants it because he sees the benefit to the patient. Now, if he came back and he said, no big deal, doesn't really change anything, and that could happen. Like, you could send your associate doctor out to Spear, and they could come back, and they could just shrug their shoulders like, this just isn't for me, man. I just want to be a regular family dentist in the moment, just do crowns, fillings, quadrant dentistry, and just crush it. And can you send me all that stuff? And this stuff's for you. And that might work for you, because that is a great practice model. That's a great practice model for a lot of dentists. And I think that would be great if you expose someone enough to something, at least that they could refer it back to you, because this course would do that. John?
Yeah. Well, that's a lot. I mean, I think that there's a lot with that is parallel from a standpoint of just coming back and saying, first of all, what kind of dentist do you want to be?
Yeah.
What is it that you want? And I think that conversation started long before we went to the course of just, what are you thinking about? But when you see things happening, sometimes as you come in as a new doctor, and, I think most people agree that regardless of your Clark Stanford or your, our new associate, that they're not getting taught a whole lot, honestly, outside of very, very basic information these days in dental school, which is fine. It's a start, but there's a lot of ways you can go, when you get out. There's always been, but I think maybe more now it's becoming harder to define what you want, because you don't even really know what's possible. Back in the 1970s, for instance, there were fewer practice options that people thought about. They just kind of were like, well, this is sort of what most dentists do. So most dentists were more similar back in those days. And as I talk to older dentists, they'll kind of say that. They're like, pretty much everybody was kind of doing a lot of the same things. But as we got more advanced in understanding, it started to become more important that you understood what you wanted to be. But gosh, it's like, what kind of dentist you want to be when you get out of school, or as you start to define your practice, as you start to get, better at what you're doing, and you start to kind of figure out what you like to do. And so I think as, we came back from this course, it was immediately the eyes were opened as to why, as you said, we collect the data that we do. Why do we, first of all, just get the information? And then why do we try to make people feel a certain way? Feel a certain way, meaning, why is it important that people come out of there and say, never had an exam like that before?
Yeah.
Why is it important that people say, this is why I will always go to this office?
Yeah.
Why is it important that a hygienist comes to work for you and says, I want to retire in this office after being out of school for a year? Why does that matter? Because they see a way of thinking, and they see a way of practicing that is different. And I don't mean different for the sake of being different and being like just some fad. I'm talking about realizing that, it's okay to not just be on this treadmill, no pun intended, as we talked about last episode, of just doing the same thing for every person. And realizing that you can present ideal dentistry to almost every single patient, whether or not they do it. But you know what ideal is. And that's what none of us knew when we left dental school. None of us knew what ideal dentistry was. And that, to me, if I could say there's one like maybe travesty to dental school today, it's not whether you know how to do ideal dentistry. It's you don't even know what it is.
So I'll say this right here. I'll intervene just a second. And, my associate's wife is a dentist. They graduated at the same time. So they've both been out 3-4 years at this point. So they both took this course. And she's in another practice that is close to our heart. It's a spear practice, similar, okay? Trying to do and achieve the same things. So they're in the airport. And I was just kind of like, so what'd y'all think? And they said that they were fired up. They're mad at dental school. Why didn't they tell us that this was out there? Yeah. And that's the best way to put it, John, is because if you're not told what the best is, like they tell you in dental school that this is the best impression material. This is the gold standard. At least they should. They did at my school. This is the best restoration, the gold inlay. This is, you put it on a pedestal, this is textbook, per se, quote. But they neglect to show you ideal dentistry. For what reason? Because it's not necessary?
Well, that's the thing. And that's where, and this is, I don't want to rant too much. I think that's why they're upset,
John. I think that's why they're fired up. They were fired up, and I was like, well, wait just a minute,
Yeah, it's like, did anyone at this is tough. It's a tough conversation.
It is tough.
But it's like, did anyone in dental school ever tell you, we're going to show you how to do basically, we're going to show you how to do 6 out of 10. And 6 out of 10 meaning just 6 out of 10 how to do a single tooth even. Not even saying 10. You weren't even taught how to do 10 out of 10 single tooth dentistry. You were taught how to do 6 out of 10 at best, single tooth dentistry. And then we're not even going to show you anything about full mouth dentistry at all. Okay. We're not even going to show you. All we're going to do is show you how to think about a single tooth, and it's a 6 out of 10. Now, if you want to go do, no one ever said though, what's weird. No one ever said, you should go to pros residency if you want to learn how to do 10 out of 10 full mouth dentistry. It wasn't even a thought process. It wasn't like why do you go to prosthodontics? Because you're a nerd. Pretty much.
That's what they sold it as.
You're a nerd. You're a nerd. You like tinkering with wax.
And we went to two different schools they never said what they were doing over there other than that you were a nerd and you were probably going into academia. They never
exactly.
said. And this
you want to go teach,
dude,
or you love
like they were doing facially generated tree implanting, guys.
Yeah.
Because
or
been
you
out
love
for 20
dentures.
years.
You love dentures. Go to pros.
That's
or
exactly. Or you want an obturator. You want to. You know what they did? They showed a cleft palate, and they said these guys are doing obturators. That's what they did at my school. They made us feel like, oh, this is all for just prosthodontists are doing eyes. They showed eyes, and I'm like, in ears and magnets in ears, and I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
You know,
so
I'm not
basically
doing
what
that.
we've learned about this, and this is where it comes back to this conversation, is what we were taught to do. It's kind of a glorified urgent care dentistry, you know, single tooth, like people come in, you can triage them, you can figure out what they need, and then you can refer them to specialists. But if you want to do it yourself at the best level, you're going to get to 6 out of 10 on anything. And you certainly do not, and really should not, be even attempting full arch dentistry, because you just don't even have the first clue. So I look now back and I think, you know, now that I know what I know, how do you even start to have the conversation unless you know where you're going? And the thing is, we didn't know where we were going, and that's maybe to boil it down. I'm trying not to get off topic too much. But you didn't even know where you were going when you got out of dental school. You just knew, okay, I see what's in front of me. I'm doing this tooth. And the most maybe thing you knew, the weird thing about this whole thing, Wes, the thing that you most knew where to go was dentures.
Yep.
Because dentures had a system.
There's a component to full arch rehabilitation.
It applied to every denture. Mm-hmm. There's no patient that walked in edentulous that you did not have okay, step 1.
Right.
8 and 9. Step 2, you know, lip at rest. Step 3, whatever. However you set your teeth in dental school, that was the only thing I think that really I got a systematic approach of how to treat every denture patient. Not saying I could be the best at it, but at least I knew all the steps that I was taught pretty extensively. And how weird is it that ends up being kind of a foundation of how we think about teeth in the face now that we've taken these courses. So we come back, all that to say, we come back, and I kind of had some similar things. You know, now my associate, he had seen some things we're doing, just like you said, in the practice that were challenging to him. Like, what are you doing over there? And I was like, dude, I hate to say this, but just don't worry about it. You know, you're not, it's like, and I mean that with all the love in my heart, because he was
fresh out of school. Because this is his first year.
Yeah. He was brand new, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. Like,
no. Because he's a great
very
guy.
much like, all right, I'm cool. Like I'm open, and I need some guardrails to know kind of what I think I should be doing, and maybe help me to know what in cases like maybe a little more than I should be doing, and so very open to that. But now we get back, and then he's like, all right, so can you give me like 4 or 5 cases that you've already treated to completion that you can give me the Dropbox photos that you took the day they came in?
Love it.
He's like, I want you to give me 4 or 5 patients that you finished. And I want you to show me the photos when they came in. And I'm not even going to look at the finished result. I'm just going to put them into a PowerPoint presentation as if I was treatment planning the case, not knowing what you did. And then I want to see what you did. And I want you to tell me what you thought about and how the conversation went and how it went from A to Z. And before I literally even had maybe settled back in, he's got a super nice monitor mounting arm in the wall of his office, and a very nice monitor coming in. I was like, this is my dream always, was for us both the doctors in my practice to have the same way of presenting, but I didn't have that years ago because we always just had 2 different approaches. And so now he's like, all right, I've already got this in. He's installing it, which, by the way, this guy, knows how to use a stud finder.
I love it.
Someone under the age of 35 that knows how to use stud finder, God bless him. So anyway, so he installs it. He gets it all in there. He's without even asking for help. I mean, God bless him. He's a Marine, for goodness sakes. I guess that's what you learn, is how to do things. But I think about this whole thing, and he's like, all right, I've got this. I'm ready for patients to come in. I'm ready to bring them back. I'm ready to talk about them enough, but then to gather data, to talk about it with you, or maybe not if he doesn't need to, and then bring the patient back to sit down and talk about the case and talk about what's possible.
Yep.
Knowing that they may or may not say yes, but just what's possible. And just today, as I came back after the break, he had put together a beautiful presentation for a patient who literally could be a single veneer case up to a MARPE and big time case, depending on how she responds to certain questions that he asks and how important it is for her to have a buccal corridor that's actually full and how her actual sleep is going. So we're talking about this, and then it's what's funny is now it gets into how you actually do the case, because now he knows
how to diagnose.
He knows where it needs to go.
Yeah.
And then what's funny is the next thing I'm like, okay, now you've seen these. We're going to get real nerdy here for a second. Listeners, if you've done some veneers, if you understand something about airway, if you understand something about how to prep teeth, okay? So some of you are going to be lost by this. That's okay. You know the cases, Wes, that we did before we knew anything about airway, and you had these collapsed buccal corridors, upper arches constricted, narrow, and people that had very kind of small teeth, you needed to fill out the buccal corridors. And you could do this beautiful thing where you could have the lab do an additive wax up, and then you could come in and have a mock up from that, and you could put it in the patient's mouth, and you could actually do a mock up. And then if they loved it, that could become your prep guide.
Isn't that the 90s, John? Isn't that the 90s?
And so you could prep through the prep guide, right? And whatever wasn't prepped was, you just take it off, and then like now you could just marginate it, and then you didn't lose your way.
Isn't that
on
what
your
lumineers are for, John?
So I'm getting excited about this case he's showing me today. I'm like, how you actually do the preps if this isn't an airway case, if it's just a
Right.
small buccal corridors, blah blah blah, and you need to do additive dentistry. And here's how you do it. You could do a mock-up, and then you could prep through the mock-up. It's funny because I saw him go, whoa, like, I know where we're going, but what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Because there's another disconnect of how you actually do the case. And I'm going to come back to Spear for a second, because I'm going to say it this way. They didn't do it this way on purpose, but it's the natural progression of how it should be. You first see where it needs to go. You know where the teeth need to go. You know where the case needs to go. You have a diagnosis, as Wes just said. Now you start identifying the weak spots in what you know how to do. You're like, all right, I know these teeth, they need to come out. I need more contour. I need more width. Maybe I have small teeth, whatever it is. And then you're like, but how do I do that? And then how much root coverage can I get on this tooth versus do I need to extrude it? And I don't even know. And then how do I temporize it? And then how do I talk to the orthodontist? And those are the beautiful questions. And those are the questions I'm getting now the most, is like, all right, I think I know where we need to go, but like, what are the steps? Because before you can really present that to the patient, you still have to have an idea of what it actually takes and how many appointments and all of that, which is a whole other thing. Anyway, that's a long answer on this, but it's been awesome to watch the wheels turning.
It's so like if you're listening to this and you're thinking about, well, what's my next path? What's my next, how do if I wanted, is this the end game for diagnosis and treatment planning? And what I would say, it's the beginning of diagnosis and treatment planning. It's not the end game. So can you take this course and stop? Absolutely. You could stop right here and you would come back a way better diagnostician. I mean, you would come back and you would be able to unlock some things that were confounding you. And then if you had, and this is the problem that we know exists, we talked about this in a previous podcast, is we do lack specialist training in some of these areas. And so if you do have a Spear study club in your area, and there could be, and you just don't know it, then this is where Spear could win. Because if the Spear study club is ran by clinicians that have cases like John and I do, to be able to help bring you along and do exactly what John and I are doing with our associates, which is taking existing cases that we have in our case logs and using them as examples to help lead and describe what we did and the prognosis and diagnosis and how that all came to be. And then crafting, I think, is the next thing, how you present this to the patient. You know, this is where collaboration and education is so necessary. We've talked about this for ad nauseum over the Dental Kai's podcast for years. We truly believe that there is no replacement for in-person education from a standpoint of like some of this stuff. You know, yes, you can watch a video on a technique. Yes, you can watch a video on how to do bonding. I mean, Marcus Blotz, we love the guy. He is the bonding king right now when it comes to like, he's like the Ray Bertolotti of today. I mean, it's incredible what you can even pick up. But until you go and actually collaborate with clinicians that are doing these techniques, you're going to miss some things that will get you into trouble. Because patients find a way, they always do, John, to ask the right question, and it's the one that's going to make you feel so uncomfortable that you're going to have to fake an answer, and they see right through that. And that's the thing here is too. Are you expecting to come back and start doing this immediately? I would say no.
Well, I think I will say I'll modify that by saying, I think for a lot of cases that were, say, an anterior case where you're just looking at, say, something like wear patterns, or you're just looking at something like, you know, is this a tooth that I should move or a tooth I should graft? Or is this a tooth that, what do I need to be thinking about to ask the questions of, should I lengthen the tooth incisally or cervically? Yeah. Or is it something where I can start to visualize where the teeth need to go so that I can tell the patient they need orthodontics versus I can do this with prosthodontics? Like, those are some things you start to get, I think, pretty easily, and you can start to have more confidence in saying, you know what, we should take that pause and we should talk about a little bit more than just number 9. Yeah. And I think that that's huge. And I can't understate that enough, because almost all the problems I see as I'm mentoring your doctors and talking to them about treatment planning, it's almost always created by, well, you know, this was already done, and then now this other thing happened. Yeah. And so this was already done was almost always a lapse in judgment based upon the patient driving the treatment plan and you just not knowing what to do. So you just went with what the patient wanted, and then the next thing happens, and now you have painted yourself into a corner. It's not about necessarily knowing how to treat the big cases. It's about going, don't make a mistake on the one tooth, because that's all you knew is how to treat a 6 out of 10 on a single tooth. And just go, okay, I can back off and go, all right, let's look at the big picture. I don't know exactly what needs to happen, but I kind of know where I'm trying to go. And then you start to decide what part of that do you want to be involved with, and what part of that do you want to refer, and what are your specialists. Like, we just had a conversation today. I'm like, all right, root coverage right there on this tooth. The question is, what can the periodontist do? So let's send these photos to the periodontist with your desired position of the teeth and say to the periodontist, can you cover this root? And if so, now that's one option. The other option is, you know, this. And I think you start to go, okay, he goes, but he already knows, hey, this root needs to be covered because this tooth's going to look too long if I just restore it. I'm like, cool. So we know the tooth is too long. It's either root coverage or it's extrusion to get the gingival levels right. And then what's the downside of that? Blah, blah, blah. We know our options. We just don't exactly know how to implement all parts of it. But gosh, are we starting to see why he said today, he's like, I see why there's certain cases you don't treat. And that's the crazy thing about all this is, like, there's certain cases I'm like, no, if you will not fall into these criteria, I won't treat you. And guess what it does for you? All of you who are running an urgent care, that's your own fault. Yeah. You cannot And all you got to do is you just got to be able to see where you're going. You don't even know how to treat all of it. You just got to be able to see what's possible, where you're going, and then present it to the patient and let them say no. Let them say no. And if they say no, I'm like, cool, you said no. All right. If something happens because we chose option C, then all right.
Expect the no.
Yeah.
90% of the time, treatment over $5,000, expect the no.
I don't mind
just, I mean, just walk in and just be bold enough to say, patients like yourself, this costs this.
You know what else I'm going to tell you, a pearl that both of us took, my associate and I took from the Spirit course. And this is good. This is good because I'm going to tell you, and they would appreciate this. Like when Gary DeWood taught the course, he had a great part of this on sort of how to think about implementation and why are you here and all this. I'm going to say Jeff Rouse did an amazing job of connecting with younger doctors.
Yeah.
And one of the things he said that really, I think, passed the mantle onto Jeff was he was like talking about when you present things to patients, letting them realizing to shut up and let the patient work through money in their own head, in their own words. So he's like, okay, so you say to this patient, here's what I think we need to do. You go through your discussion and you say, all right, and this is, you know, the option that I think we should choose. And whether it's you presenting money or someone else, you know, there's a money presentation, there's a money discussion, and you're like, okay, this is going to be $42,333. And then just shut up. And he's like, the tendency is patient goes, well, that $42,000. And you just shut up. Because you realize the patient's working through it as you're there. So they're like, well, that's a lot of money. Just shut up. Well, my car costs that same as that. Just shut up. They're working through the problem verbally. It doesn't mean they're saying no. They're just telling you that it costs something, and they're working through, as you sit there, they're working through the value proposition of whether it is worth it to them. Mm-hmm. And if you intervene and go, yeah, I know it's a lot, or we could always look at another option, you're just screwing yourself.
Shut up.
Just shut up.
My brother uses this example. He said, Wes, 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth.
Yeah.
Just shut up.
Yeah.
You know, and
I mean,
it's so true.
So true.
You know, the other day, and you and I we know each other, so we practice, like, we talk to people very similar. And I have a great relationship with my patient care advocate, treatment planning coordinator, and her and I've worked together for a very long time, so we can read each other in a room. And we always recap. And sometimes I have a tendency not to shut up. So the other day, you know, I had a treatment presentation. And my treatment presentations have actually gotten a little more simpler over the years because of just some logistic things that I'm working on and not trying to tell the world. Like every little thing, because people come to you, they want this type of dentistry. Well, I know I have these problems. Just tell me how to fix it. Mm-hmm. So I show them an outcome. And I show them their face, and they're like, yes, I see the similar thing. Okay, how do we do that? Well, this treatment cost $50, $60, $80. And they're like, man, I'm just waiting.
Yep.
I'm like, okay.
Shut
and
your
I said,
mouth.
you know, listen, you know, I really appreciate you. If you have any, and here's how I end the conversation. If you have any clinical conversations for me about choices or options and, you know, how we can go from point A to point B once you've decided, you know, when you're ready for us to get going here, please let me know. Jordan will bring me back in and we can go over treatment options for you. But this is what I recommend for you. I don't even give a second option anymore, you know, because people don't even know how to make decisions, you know, about these things. So I'll leave the room. and I've just dropped the bomb.
Yep.
And a lot of times what happens there is the processing that you're talking about. And my wife knows one of these patients that I recently gave a $50,000 treatment plan to, and this patient's like 73 years old. They paint together. And she's an intellectual, and she comes to me with these problems. And Laura and her, they chat. And Laura's like, you're welcome to see Wes, call, ask for him. So I do my thing and gave her the plan. It was probably 50, And so I don't know. I mean, I felt like it went well. Afterwards, we recapped, just how did that go? We always do a little recap. Like, how did that go? Mm-hmm. Was the things that I said, how was it presented? And she said, perfect. You were quiet when you needed to be, and you spoke when you needed to be. I was like, did she have any questions? No, she understood. And I was like, so what was the decision? She said she wanted to kind of process. So later that 2 weeks later, my wife came in from painting, and she said, I said, well, how's such and such? And she was like, well, she brought it up, and she told me. And she said what you said. She says, I'm just trying to decide if I'm worth it. If it's worth it right now. And I think it is. She said, I think it is. And she complimented our office on how professional and how we handled like her concerns and her conditions and she said no one had ever told her why she was the way she was. And she had been confounded with so many dental issues over her life. And this was somebody that had been treated to reactive dentistry. And it was good reactive dentistry. But it reached a point where it had started to become a concern to her and a disability in her daily life. Yep. To the point now you're going to have to do, so it's like,
and I think as we, right. And that's what you want people to be asking, because that is a buying question still. It's a buying question. It's the same thing people ask when they're deciding on what trim of truck they want to buy. Is the King Ranch worth it? Or is it something but even more than that, it's, that's simplifying it, because what we're talking about is, are you going to feel better? Are you going to look better? Are you going to be healthier? But it's the same emotional decision of people like, does it feel worth it? Is it feel worth it? Because they don't really know if it's worth it. They just know if it feels worth it. And I think that, there's nothing sometimes more beautiful than the no. It's like the becoming comfortable with the no, and knowing that if somebody chooses to, hey, can you give me another option? And I give them another option, and it's a lesser option, and it's not good, and it won't last as long. It is sometimes music to my ears, because first of all, it tells me that their value, and it also tells me that if something happens, it doesn't go well, that I've prepared them for. It's such a beautiful conversation to go, yeah, you remember that thing we talked about? When I told you that we probably should have done this in this other way? Well, that's what's happening right now. That's what's happening right now. And
it's such
instead
a great
of it being
thing.
My problem that I created, it becomes their problem that they chose.
And it's 1,000%. Like the reason,
and all of a sudden the urgent care goes away when that person calls you, and they're like,
if I could just,
they're like, my denture's loose, and we're like, yeah, your denture's supposed to be loose because we told you it would be loose. So I'll get you in sometime soon. But this is not an emergency, and also it's something we expected, and you either have to decide, is it something you can get used to, or is it something that you want to take a huge step back to the conversation we had at the beginning? And that changes your practice. I cannot tell you how much it changes your practice. And so I just want to say, as we kind of like come in for the landing here, what we've had when we left dental school, and we didn't know what we had, but I see it now in these newer doctors who are going to these courses, and they're having their eyes open. They're going, whoa, okay. So you're saying that I can use the skills I got from dental school and improve on those to do an excellent restoration. or an excellent root canal or an excellent extraction or whatever it is that you feel comfortable doing. But I can do it now within a set of rules, a set of boundaries that are safe and comprehensive. I can choose to refer if needed. And this is where I'm telling you, if we could just convince people to think this way, every single part of your life, from whether you dread work on Monday, that goes away. From whether you feel you don't know what to do next, that goes away. From feeling like you can't even be involved in the conversation, really, you're just kind of like, you sort of like things are just happening in your practice, it goes away. All of a sudden you get control back, and you get the feeling of confidence. It's so worth every single minute and every single penny that you spend. And I will give credit to Spear for allowing us access to people who are actually teaching these courses, to be able to talk to them about what they're thinking, why they do what they do, what they think you're going to get out of this. And, you know, I do think, and I don't say this, I really do believe this. You all, if you've been with us for long enough, you know, we didn't just start this 6 months ago. We started this 10 years ago almost now. And it was 10 years ago. And when we started in 2016 with Spear, we weren't getting paid a dime to do anything. We just went out there and we just documented our experience. You know, this was way before we had any sponsors, we had any financial anything. It was just something we thought people might be interested in. And it literally has transformed our practices. And thank you to Spear for what they've done. Thank you to Greg and Jeff for being willing to mentor and put up with us. And, you know, it's awesome. I'm excited for what comes next, because I'm waiting for the question, which I haven't really heard yet, of like, what do I do next?
Yeah, so I'll say this is that came up. And I think there's a certain amount of, like, John and I could have another conversation about the distance from dental school. So my associate and his wife have been distanced from dental school for 3 to 4 years. And so his associate was distanced from dental school almost 9 months to a year. And so what we experienced from that could be the result of what I experience now, which is my associate and his wife have already signed up for the next part of their curriculum.
Love it.
And I love it. But and they asked me what I thought about that, and I did advise them, and I said, this is what I would do in your all shoes because of where you're all at. Some people, it might be different. Don't think, and I'm not even going to tell you what course they're taking because it's not right, because I don't know you. I know them. And it was it was an hour-long conversation where I had to ask them a lot of questions. And so what I can say about this, John, is that we really do appreciate Spear Education. And listen, you know, 10 years out, half of our practice has been learning how to do this. And the first part of our practice was just figuring out dentistry, you know, and learning how to make it happen. So if you're listening to this, hey, give us a shout out, 865-544-8954. Text the Dental Guys. If you're interested in taking the course, don't forget, offer code Dental Guys gets you 20% off treatment planning with confidence. Please use the code. It does help us out in a great way, and let Spear know you found out about them through us. We've got some exciting things coming up. We're going to be spending some time talking about the Academy of Osseointegration meeting coming up, so stay tuned for that. For John, I'm Wes, and we are the Dental Guys.